In a world where heroes often go unnoticed, some moments of disrespect become turning points that remind us all of the true meaning of sacrifice. This is exactly what happened when a decorated war veteran faced public humiliation over his Medal of Honor, until Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped in with 4 simple words that changed everything. Comment where you're watching from today as we dive into this powerful story of respect, redemption, and the true meaning of heroism. It was a crisp autumn morning in downtown Los Angeles. Golden sunlight spilled across the polished marble floors of the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, where hundreds of people gathered for the annual Military Honors Ceremony. The air buzzed with anticipation as distinguished guests in formal attire mingled among uniformed service members. American flags hung proudly from the rafters, and a sense of patriotic reverence filled the room. Among the crowd stood Aaron Brooks, a 68-year-old former Marine with weathered hands and eyes that had seen more than most could imagine. His posture remained military straight, despite the decades that had passed since his service in Vietnam. While other decorated veterans wore their full-dress uniforms, Aaron had chosen a simple navy blazer with just a single medal pinned to his chest, a Medal of Honor that caught the light with each careful movement he made. Unlike the others who laughed and shared war stories, Aaron stood quietly near the refreshment table, sipping water and observing the room with the watchful eyes of someone who had learned the hard way to always be aware of his surroundings. Not far from Aaron, Kevin Smith worked the room with practiced ease. As the wealthy CEO of a defense contracting company, Kevin moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. His custom-tailored suit probably cost more than what most veterans received in monthly benefits. At 45, Kevin had never served in the military himself, but his company had made millions developing technology for the armed forces, which secured him invitations to events like these. His booming laugh carried across the room as he clapped shoulders and shook hands with high-ranking officials and politicians. Another successful year for Smith Industries, Kevin announced to a small group gathered around him. Our new tactical systems will revolutionize how our boys fight overseas. Less risk, more efficiency. He raised his champagne glass to protecting our troops while expanding our global reach. The small crowd around him raised their glasses in response, impressed by his patriotic rhetoric and business acumen. Kevin glanced around the room, his eyes eventually landing on Aaron, who stood alone by a wall of fallen heroes. "Who's the old-timer?" Kevin asked a nearby event coordinator, nodding toward Aaron. "That's Aaron Brooks," the coordinator whispered respectfully. "One of only 4 living Medal of Honor recipients attending today." Kevin's eyebrows raised slightly. He excused himself from his admirers and made his way toward Aaron, seeing an opportunity for a photo that would look good in his company newsletter. As he approached, he noticed how modest Aaron appeared compared to other decorated veterans. No rows of colorful ribbons, just the single medal that hung from a light blue ribbon adorned with white stars. "Quite the party, isn't it?" Kevin said, extending his hand to Aaron. "Kevin Smith, Smith Industries." Aaron shook his hand firmly but briefly. "Aaron Brooks. So you're one of our honored guests today," Kevin continued, his voice carrying just a bit too loudly. "Though I have to say, you're not exactly dressed for the occasion. Most of the vets here really went all out." He gestured to a group of uniformed veterans nearby, their chests covered in medals and ribbons. Aaron nodded politely. "Everyone honors their service differently, sir." Kevin's eyes fixed on the Medal of Honor. "That's the only decoration you've got? Must have been a short tour." He chuckled at his own joke, expecting Aaron to join in with the casual banter. Aaron's expression remained unchanged, neither offended nor amused. It was long enough. Kevin, misreading Aaron's reserved demeanor as awkwardness, tried to keep the conversation flowing. "You know, we manufacture the guidance systems for the new combat drones, saving American lives by keeping our boys out of harm's way. That's the future of warfare. No more need for boots on the ground and all that old-school heroics. Aaron took a slow sip of his water. There will always be need for people willing to stand between innocence and danger, Mr. Smith. Kevin waved, his hand dismissively. Well, that's what technology is for now. The days of charging hills and jumping on grenades are over, thank God. Makes those old medals a bit obsolete, doesn't it? He reached out and flicked the Medal of Honor with his finger as if appraising its worth, though I'm sure it was impressive in its time. A subtle hush fell over those standing nearby who had overheard Kevin's remarks. An older woman in an army dress uniform shot Kevin a withering glance. Aaron himself remained composed, his weathered face betraying no emotion except perhaps a flicker of sadness in his eyes. Some things never become obsolete, Mr. Smith, Aaron said quietly. Courage, sacrifice, putting others before yourself. Kevin, sensing he might have crossed a line but unwilling to back down, laughed a bit too loudly. Well, I sacrifice plenty. The tax bracket I'm in is its own kind of battlefield. He turned to include the onlookers in his joke, but found most of them staring at him with thinly veiled disgust. Say, what did you even get that medal for anyway? Kevin asked, doubling down rather than retreating. They gave those out for all. Those sorts of things back in the day, didn't they? Before Aaron could respond, a tall figure stepped between them. Jordan Rodriguez, the event's master of ceremonies and a retired colonel, placed a protective hand on Aaron's shoulder. Mr. Smith, Jordan said, his voice low but commanding, perhaps you'd like to join the Secretary of Defense at the VIP table. I believe he wanted to discuss your company's latest proposal. Kevin brightened at the mention of the secretary, completely missing the attempt to extract him from the increasingly uncomfortable situation. Of course, always time for the secretary. We'll finish catching up later, Brooks. He gave Aaron a wink and moved away, oblivious to the tension he'd created. Jordan turned to Aaron with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry about that, sir. Some people just don't understand. Aaron shook his head slightly. No need to apologize, Colonel. He's not the first, won't be the last. The incident might have ended there, a small moment of disrespect quickly forgotten in the bustle of the ceremony. But Kevin Smith wasn't finished. Throughout the pre-ceremony reception, fueled by champagne and his own self-importance, he continued to make remarks within earshot of others. Did you see that old guy with just the one medal? Acting like he's too good for the whole uniform, Kevin commented to Ryan Jenkins, another defense contractor. Probably got it for political reasons. You know how it was back then. They handed those things out to boost morale. Ryan, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, tried to change the subject. I think the ceremony is about to start. We should find our seats, but Kevin persisted as they walked toward the auditorium. I'm just saying, these old war stories get embellished over time. My grandfather used to claim he single-handedly took out a machine gun nest in Korea. Family ate it up, but come on. As the audience settled into their seats, the mood in the auditorium grew solemn. The stage was set with flags and a podium where various speakers would honor the sacrifices of America's military heroes. What no one expected was that one of the special guests announced to present an award was none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose presence had been kept as a surprise for the attendees. The audience erupted in applause as the former governor and action star took the stage. Despite his fame, Arnold spoke with genuine humility about his admiration for America's military heroes. As he presented several awards, his respect for each recipient was evident in his demeanor. Kevin leaned over to Ryan, speaking in what he thought was a whisper but carried further than he realized. Celebrity appearance. Nice touch. Bet he doesn't know the first thing about what these guys actually did. Several rows ahead, Aaron Brooks sat quietly, his posture perfect, his eyes focused on the ceremony. He had been asked to present the final award of the day, though his own story would not be highlighted at his personal request. When the time came, Jordan Rodriguez approached the podium. For our final presentation today, I'd like to call upon one of America's greatest living heroes, though he would never describe himself that way. Ladies and gentlemen, Medal of Honor recipient Aaron Brooks. A respectful hush fell over the crowd. As Aaron made his way to the stage, Kevin, now fully invested in his skepticism, muttered to those around him, "One medal guy. Really? What could he have possibly done that was so special?" Michelle Hendricks, sitting next to Kevin, had finally had enough. "That's Aaron Brooks," she whispered fiercely. "He saved 13 men in his platoon by drawing enemy fire away from their position after they were ambushed. He was shot 8 times and still managed to get all of his wounded men to the extraction point." Kevin blinked, momentarily silenced, but still not entirely convinced. On stage, Aaron spoke briefly, his voice steady and humble as he prepared to present an award to a young Marine who had shown extraordinary courage in Afghanistan. But before he could continue, Arnold, who had been watching the ceremony from the side of the stage, stepped forward and asked for the microphone. To Aaron, "Mr. Brooks, I've read about what you did in Vietnam, how you carried men through a field of fire, how you refused evacuation until everyone else was safe, how you returned to service after recovering from your wounds." The audience was completely silent now, including Kevin, whose expression had begun to shift from skepticism to uncertainty. Arnold continued, "In my life, I've played heroes on screen. I've lifted heavy weights. I've governed a state. But none of it compares to the courage that this man showed on a single day in 1971. Arnold then did something unexpected. He removed his suit jacket, revealing that he was wearing a simple button-up shirt. He carefully unpinned Aaron's Medal of Honor and held it up for the audience to see. "This piece of metal," Arnold said, his voice breaking slightly, "represents the highest level of sacrifice and courage our nation recognizes. Only a fraction of those who receive it survive the actions that earned it." He turned to face Aaron directly. "It is not just a medal, it is not obsolete, and neither is the type of courage it represents." The audience began to rise to their feet, emotion evident on many faces. Kevin remained seated, his earlier bravado visibly deflating as the weight of his disrespect began to dawn on him. Arnold carefully repinned the medal on Aaron's chest and then leaned in close to whisper something that only those on stage could hear. Though the microphone didn't catch his exact words, those with a view of Aaron's face saw something remarkable. The stoic veteran's eyes filled with tears. Later, Jordan Rodriguez would reveal that Arnold had simply whispered 4 words to Aaron: "Heroes still walk among us." By the time Aaron and Arnold turned back to the audience, everyone was standing, including a visibly shaken Kevin Smith. The applause was deafening, not just for the medal or for Arnold's unexpected speech, but for the principle that true heroism, the kind that puts others before oneself, would never become obsolete. Has someone ever dismissed your achievements or the significance of something you valued? Tell us in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the smallest tokens carry the weight of our greatest sacrifices. As the standing ovation continued, Kevin Smith found himself clapping mechanically, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. The magnitude of his disrespect was beginning to sink in, a growing knot of shame forming in his stomach. From his vantage point, he could see Aaron Brooks on stage, standing tall despite his age, accepting the audience's admiration with quiet dignity. For the first time, Kevin noticed the slight tremor in the older man's right hand, the barely perceptible limp as he moved to the side of the stage, physical reminders of sacrifices made decades ago. The ceremony proceeded with the scheduled presentation, Aaron bestowing a Medal of Valor upon Lance Corporal Gabriel Daniels, a young Marine who had risked his life to save civilians during a terrorist attack on a diplomatic compound. Yet the audience remained captivated by the unexpected. moment they had just witnessed between the action star and the quiet hero. Today, we honor not just the medals. Aaron spoke into the microphone, his voice steady and clear despite his emotion moments before, but the principles they represent: courage, selflessness, and unwavering commitment to others in the face of danger. As the ceremony concluded and people began to file out of the auditorium, conversations buzzed with talk of Arnold's impromptu speech and the evident impact it had made on everyone present. Kevin remained in his seat, uncharacteristically silent, while others around him rose to leave. "Coming to the reception, Kevin?" asked Ryan Jenkins, noticing his colleague's unusual demeanor. Kevin nodded absently. "I'll be there in a minute." The post-ceremony reception was held in an adjacent hall where refreshments were served and attendees could mingle with the honorees. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a memorial garden, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across carefully tended paths lined with plaques commemorating fallen service members. Aaron Brooks stood near one of these windows, a glass of water in hand, engaged in conversation with Arnold and a small group of veterans. Though surrounded by people eager to speak with him, he maintained the same humble demeanor he'd displayed throughout the day. From across the room, Kevin watched the interaction, wrestling with whether to approach. Michelle Hendricks appeared at his side, her expression making it clear she hadn't forgotten his earlier comments. "You know," she said, her voice professional but cool, "my father served with Aaron in Vietnam. The stories he told me about that, they don't even capture half of what really happened." Kevin swallowed hard. "I had no idea who he was." "That's the point," Michelle replied. "Men like Aaron don't wear their heroism like a banner. They don't need to." "What actually happened?" Kevin asked, his earlier smugness replaced by genuine curiosity. Michelle's expression softened slightly at his apparent sincerity. "Their platoon was ambushed deep in enemy territory. Communication was cut off, half the men were wounded, and they were surrounded. Aaron had been shot twice already when he decided to create a diversion." She paused, looking across the room at Aaron. He told the others to carry the wounded to the extraction point while he drew enemy fire in the opposite direction. He was a staff sergeant then, not much older than some of these new recipients today. Everyone thought it was a suicide mission. Kevin listened intently as Michelle continued. He managed to eliminate 3 enemy positions before being hit again, but instead of retreating or taking cover, he kept moving, drawing more fire away from where his men were escaping. By the time he circled back to the extraction point, he'd been shot 8 times. His uniform was soaked with blood, but he refused evacuation until all 13 of his men were loaded first. "How did he survive?" Kevin asked quietly. The medics didn't think he would. He was in surgery for 18 hours, spent a year in recovery. "And you know what he did after he healed enough to walk?" Michelle looked directly at Kevin. "He requested to return to his unit." The weight of his earlier mockery pressed heavily on Kevin's conscience. Across the room, he noticed that the crowd around Aaron had thinned, leaving the veteran momentarily alone near the memorial window. Making a decision, Kevin straightened his tie and walked purposefully across the room. As he approached, Aaron turned, recognition flickering in his eyes. There was no judgment in his expression, no hint of resentment for the earlier disrespect, only a patient expectation. "Mr. Brooks," Kevin began, his typical confidence absent from his voice, "I owe you an apology. My comments earlier were inexcusable." Aaron studied him for a moment before responding. "Apology accepted, Mr. Smith." The simplicity and immediacy of the forgiveness caught Kevin off guard. He had prepared himself for coldness, for deserved rebuke. "I didn't understand," Kevin continued, feeling compelled to explain himself. "In my world, everything has a price tag, a marketing angle. I've spent so long selling the idea that technology can replace human courage that I started believing it myself." Aaron nodded thoughtfully. "Technology has its place. It saves lives, but it will never replace the human heart's capacity for sacrifice." He gestured toward the memorial garden outside. "Each name out there represents someone who understood that some things are worth dying for." Kevin followed Aaron's gaze to the garden. "I've never served, never been tested that way." "Few have," Aaron replied, "and that's a blessing. But we all face moments where we choose between self-preservation and standing up for something greater." He looked back at Kevin. "Your apology just now, that was choosing the harder path. Small step, but the right direction." From across the room, Arnold noticed the conversation and made his way over, his imposing figure drawing glances from throughout the reception hall. "Everything good here?" Arnold asked, his question clearly directed at Aaron. "Just fine," Aaron assured him. "Mr. Smith and I were having a productive conversation." Arnold's gaze shifted to Kevin, who stood uncomfortably under the scrutiny of the former bodybuilder and governor. After a moment, Arnold's expression softened. "You know," Arnold said, "in my country, in Austria, I grew up hearing stories of American heroes. It was part of why I wanted to come to the United States. The idea that ordinary people could do extraordinary things for each other." He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "When I learned I would meet a Medal of Honor recipient today, I read everything I could find about Mr. Brooks, his story. It reminds us what humans are capable of at their best." Kevin nodded, finding himself genuinely moved. "I'm beginning to understand that." Their conversation was interrupted as Jordan Rodriguez approached with a photographer. "Arnold, Aaron, if you don't mind, the secretary would like a photo." As Aaron and Arnold prepared to move away, Kevin impulsively reached out. "Mr. Brooks, would it be possible to continue our conversation later? Perhaps I could buy you lunch?" "Next week?" Surprise flickered across Aaron's weathered features, followed by a small nod. "I'd like that, Mr. Smith." "Kevin," he corrected. "Please, call me Kevin." As Aaron moved away with Arnold, Kevin found himself standing alone, watching the veteran navigate through the crowd with handshakes and humble nods of acknowledgement. The contrast between the man Kevin had perceived earlier and the man he was beginning to understand now couldn't have been more stark. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Kevin found himself in conversation with Brett Perry, a general who now headed a veterans support organization. "You know," Brett remarked, "I saw you speaking with Brooks earlier. Quite a turnaround from this morning." Kevin winced. "Word travels fast." "In these circles, yes," Brett confirmed, "but I also saw you apologize, which takes character." "Not nearly as much as what he did," Kevin replied. Brett studied him thoughtfully. "You know what makes Aaron's story even more remarkable? After he recovered, he didn't just return to service. He became an advocate for other veterans, especially those who came home broken in body and spirit. He spent more time visiting VA hospitals than anyone I know." Kevin absorbed this information with growing admiration. "I had no idea." "Most people don't," Brett said. "He doesn't do it for recognition. In fact, he specifically asks not to be introduced as a Medal of Honor recipient when he visits. Says it creates a barrier between him and the younger vets." The conversation was interrupted as Aaron himself approached, preparing to leave the event. To Kevin's surprise, the older man extended his hand once more. "Our lunch," Aaron said. "I'm free Tuesday if that works for you." "Tuesday's perfect," Kevin replied, taking his hand. "I'll call your office to arrange details." Aaron shook his head with a small smile. "I don't have an office. Just call me directly." He pulled a worn business card from his wallet and handed it to Kevin. The card was simple, just a name and phone number, no titles or accolades. As Aaron turned to leave, Arnold appeared once more, accompanying the veteran toward the exit. Kevin watched them go, the unlikely pair, the international superstar and the quiet hero, walking side by side. Brett's voice broke into his thoughts. "You know what Arnold whispered to him on stage, don't you?" Kevin shook his head. "I couldn't hear from where I was sitting. Heroes still walk among us," Brett said. Simple, but it hit Aaron hard. For years, he's insisted he's not a hero, just someone who did what anyone would do in the same situation. Having someone he respects as much as Arnold acknowledge his heroism, it meant something special. Kevin looked down at the simple business card in his hand. "I think I've got a lot to learn from Mr. Brooks." "Aaron," Brett corrected with a smile. "He'll insist you call him Aaron." In the days that followed, news of the moment between Arnold and Aaron spread across social media. Someone had captured Arnold's speech and the emotional reaction on video, and it had gone viral, garnering millions of views and thousands of comments, from people sharing their own stories of unsung heroes in their lives. For Kevin Smith, the video served as a constant reminder of his misjudgment, appearing repeatedly in his social media feeds. Rather than avoid it, he found himself watching it again and again, each viewing deepening his understanding of what true strength looked like. It wasn't found in corporate power or financial success, but in the quiet dignity of someone who had given everything for others without expecting recognition in return. Tuesday arrived, and Kevin found himself sitting across from Aaron at a small diner. Aaron's choice, far from the upscale restaurants Kevin typically frequented for business. Lunches, the simplicity of the setting matched the man himself. "I want to do more than just apologize," Kevin said after they had ordered. "My company has resources that could help veterans. I'd like to put those to better use." Aaron studied him over his coffee cup. "What did you have in mind?" "That's just it," Kevin admitted. "I don't know enough about what's really needed. I've been designing weapons and systems without thinking enough about the people who use them or what happens to them after they come home." Aaron nodded slowly. "That's a good place to start, recognizing what you don't know." As their conversation continued, Kevin began to see a path forward, a way to transform his moment of shame into something meaningful. By the time they finished lunch, the framework of a new veterans support initiative had taken shape, one that would leverage Smith Industries' resources and connections to address practical needs of returning service members. And so it was that a moment of disrespect, followed by 4 whispered words from an unlikely source, set in motion a chain of events that would eventually improve the lives of thousands of veterans. All because a hero's medal and the sacrifice it represented had finally been given the respect it deserved. Have you ever misjudged someone based on appearances, only to discover the depth of character beneath? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes our greatest moments of growth come from acknowledging our mistakes and learning from those we once failed to understand. 3 weeks after their lunch meeting, Kevin Smith stood before the board of directors at Smith Industries, presenting a proposal unlike any they had seen from their CEO before. Gone was the usual focus on profit margins and market expansion. Instead, Kevin spoke passionately about a new division dedicated solely to veteran support initiatives. "Gentlemen, ladies," Kevin addressed the room, his voice carrying a conviction that surprised even his longest-serving board members. "For years, we've profited from military contracts while maintaining a comfortable distance from the human cost of warfare. I believe it's time we bridge that gap." The boardroom remained silent as Kevin outlined his vision, a comprehensive program that would include specialized employment opportunities for veterans, funding for PTSD research, and technological innovations specifically designed to assist those with combat-related disabilities. The centerpiece would be a rehabilitation center offering cutting-edge prosthetics and therapy services at no cost to wounded veterans. This represents a significant allocation of resources, noted Daniel. Russell, the company's CFO, studying the financial projections with a furrowed brow. What prompted this sudden shift in priorities? Kevin paused, considering how much of his personal transformation to share. Let's just say, I recently gained a new perspective on the true cost and value of military service. Patricia Vance, one of the more senior board members, fixed Kevin with a knowing look. Would this have anything to do with that viral video from the veteran ceremony? The one where you're visible in the background looking rather uncomfortable. A murmur went through the room as other board members exchanged glances. The video had indeed circulated widely, though out of respect for Kevin, no one had mentioned it directly until now. Kevin straightened his shoulders. Yes, it does. That day, I made the mistake of disrespecting a Medal of Honor recipient, Aaron Brooks. I've since come to know him, and through him, I've learned about the challenges facing our veterans. Challenges we are uniquely positioned to address. The board's initial skepticism gradually gave way to engagement as Kevin continued his presentation, particularly when he explained how many of their existing technologies could be adapted for rehabilitation purposes. By the time he concluded, even the most profit-focused members seemed moved by the potential impact. We'll need to form a committee to refine the implementation strategy, Kevin finished, and I'd like to bring in external advisors with first-hand experience in veterans affairs, such as Mr. Brooks, Patricia suggested with a slight smile. Kevin nodded. He's agreed to serve as a consultant, along with several other veterans representing different eras of service and types of needs. As the board voted overwhelmingly to approve the initiative, Kevin felt a sense of purpose that had been missing from his work for longer than he cared to admit. The company that had built his fortune would now help rebuild lives, a transformation as significant as his own ongoing personal change. Meanwhile, across town, Aaron Brooks sat in a VA hospital room, visiting with Tyler Jimenez, a young Marine, recovering from injuries sustained in a roadside bombing 6 months earlier. These weekly visits had been part of Aaron's routine for years, though he rarely spoke about them to others. "So this defense contractor just approached you out of nowhere?" Tyler asked, adjusting his position in the bed, wincing slightly as he moved his healing leg. Aaron smiled slightly. "Not exactly out of nowhere. Let's just say our first meeting didn't go particularly well. But now he wants to fund this whole program because of you. That's wild. Because of all of us," Aaron corrected gently. "Men and women like you remind people what service really means." Tyler looked down at his hands, the burns still visible across his knuckles. "Doesn't feel like much some days, especially stuck in here." "I remember that feeling," Aaron said quietly. "After my 8th surgery, I thought I'd never leave the hospital." Time crawled by. Tyler studied the older man with newfound curiosity. Aaron had visited him regularly for weeks, but had shared little about his own experiences until now. "How'd you get through it?" Tyler asked. "One day at a time," Aaron replied, "and by focusing on the next person who needed help rather than my own troubles. That's what I'm hoping this new program will do for others, give them purpose during recovery and beyond." As their conversation continued, neither man noticed Arnold Schwarzenegger standing quietly in the doorway, having arrived for a surprise visit to the VA hospital. He watched the interaction between the decorated Vietnam veteran and the young Marine with a profound appreciation for the continuity of service and sacrifice across generations. When Aaron finally noticed Arnold, he stood to greet him with evident surprise. "This is unexpected," Arnold smiled, stepping into the room. "I make regular visits to veterans' hospitals, usually without cameras or publicity." He extended his hand to Tyler, who looked stunned to see the famous actor in his hospital room. "Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's an honor to meet you." "Tyler Jimenez," the young Marine managed, shaking the offered hand. Wow, I grew up watching your movies. And now I'm watching real heroes like you, Arnold replied without a trace of his usual movie star persona. He turned to Aaron. I heard about your collaboration with Smith Industries. Impressive initiative. Aaron nodded. It's still in the early stages, but Kevin seems genuinely committed. Kevin Smith? Arnold raised an eyebrow. The same man from the ceremony? People can surprise you, Aaron said simply. The three men talked for nearly an hour, with Arnold sharing stories about his own father's military service in World War II and listening intently as Tyler described his unit's experiences overseas. Throughout the conversation, Aaron noticed how Arnold consistently directed attention to Tyler rather than himself, a genuine respect that transcended celebrity. As their visit concluded and they walked together down the hospital corridor, Arnold turned to Aaron. What you're doing with Smith, it could change many lives. That's the hope, Aaron replied. Kevin has the resources and technology. We have the understanding of what's actually needed. Together, maybe we can bridge that gap. Arnold nodded, thoughtfully. You know, after our ceremony, I received thousands of messages from people sharing stories about the veterans in their lives. Many said they had never really understood what the medals represented until that moment. They paused near the hospital exit, where Arnold's security detail waited discreetly. Those 4 words you said to me on stage, Aaron said quietly. They've traveled far, Arnold smiled. Because they're true. Heroes still walk among us, often unrecognized even by those closest to them. He clasped Aaron's shoulder firmly. Keep me updated on the Smith Industries project. If there's any way I can help promote it, just ask. As Arnold departed, Aaron checked his watch and realized he was running late for another appointment. This, one with Kevin Smith and the newly formed Veterans Initiative team. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity, transforming his typically quiet routine into a series of meetings and planning sessions. When Aaron arrived at Smith Industries, headquarters 30 minutes later, he found himself in an environment starkly different from the VA hospital. The sleek, modern building with its glass and steel architecture projected power and prosperity. Yet as the security guard escorted him to the conference room, Aaron noted the newly installed wheelchair accessibility features and the military service flags now displayed prominently in the lobby. Kevin greeted him warmly, introducing him to a team that included both corporate executives and several veterans recently hired as consultants. Among them was Michelle Hendricks, who had provided Kevin with Aaron's background at the ceremony. We've been reviewing the preliminary designs for the rehabilitation center, Kevin explained, guiding Aaron to a seat at the head of the table beside his own. I wanted to wait for you before we discussed the therapeutic focus areas. For the next 2 hours, Aaron listened more than he spoke, impressed by the thoroughness of the planning already underway. When he did offer input, particularly regarding psychological support services, the room fell silent, everyone taking notes with evident respect for his perspective. There's something else I'd like to propose, Aaron said as the meeting neared its conclusion. A mentorship program pairing corporate employees with transitioning service members. Not for charity, but for mutual benefit. Veterans bring leadership skills and crisis management experience that can't be taught in business school. Kevin's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. It addresses employment while also changing our corporate culture. He turned to his chief operating officer. Frank, can you lead the development on this? As the meeting adjourned, Kevin asked Aaron to stay behind. Once they were alone, Kevin revealed architectural renderings for the rehabilitation center. We're thinking of naming it after you, Kevin said. Aaron immediately shook his head. That's not why I'm doing this. I know, Kevin replied. That's precisely why it would be appropriate. There are thousands of veterans more deserving of that honor. Aaron insisted. If you want a name, choose someone who didn't make it home. Kevin studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. What about the Heroes Walk Among Us Foundation? Not tied to any individual, but to the principle itself. Aaron considered this, a slight smile forming. Arnold would approve. Speaking of whom, Kevin said, sliding a folder across the table. His publicist called this morning. He wants to host a fundraising gala for the initiative. A-list celebrities, major corporate donors, extensive media coverage. Aaron's expression turned hesitant. That seems very high profile. It is, Kevin acknowledged, and ordinarily I jump at the publicity opportunity. But I wanted to check with you first. This has to stay true to its purpose. Aaron thoughtfully thumbed through the proposal. The exposure could help reach more veterans in need, he conceded. But I don't want this turning into a celebrity photo opportunity. What if we ensure that for every celebrity there are 5 veterans in attendance? People whose stories need to be heard. We use the star power to amplify their voices, not overshadow. In them, the suggestion resonated with Aaron. I think that could work. As Aaron left Smith Industries that afternoon, he reflected on the unexpected path his life had taken in recent weeks. For decades, he had served his fellow veterans quietly, one hospital visit at a time. Now suddenly, he found himself at the center of an initiative with the potential to help thousands. The following morning, Aaron received a package at his modest home. Inside was a framed photo of himself, Arnold, and Kevin from a recent planning meeting, along with a handwritten note from Arnold. From an unexpected moment comes unexpected good. Proud to stand with you both. Aaron placed the frame on his mantle, next to a faded photograph of his platoon from Vietnam. Young men forever frozen in time, some of whom never grew old. The contrast between the images was striking. A half-century of life and service captured in 2 photographs. His phone rang, Kevin calling with updates about potential corporate partners who wanted to contribute to the initiative. As they spoke, Aaron gazed at the photographs, thinking about how a single moment of disrespect, followed by 4 words of recognition, had catalyzed such meaningful change. 6 months later, the Heroes Walk Among Us Foundation hosted its inaugural gala. The red carpet featured an unusual sight: celebrities and corporate executives walking alongside veterans of various ages, many with visible injuries or prosthetics. Media coverage, which typically focused on designer outfits and celebrity relationships, instead highlighted the stories of service and sacrifice shared by the veterans in attendance. Aaron, uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo but committed to the cause, found himself approached by journalists throughout the evening. To each, he redirected attention to the younger veterans present and the services the foundation would provide. Near the end of the evening, Arnold took the stage as the gala's host. The room fell silent as his powerful presence commanded attention. Many of you have seen the video, Arnold began, a moment where I had the privilege of recognizing a true hero. What you may not know is what happened afterward. He gestured to where Kevin and Aaron sat at adjacent tables. A man who recognized his mistake, a hero who offered forgiveness, and together they created something that will help thousands. Arnold paused, surveying the room filled with influential figures from entertainment, business, and politics. We call this the Heroes Walk Among Us Foundation because it's true. They are here tonight. They are in hospitals recovering from fresh wounds. They are homeless on streets after falling through societal cracks. They are quietly living next door to you, carrying experiences most of us can barely imagine. The room remained completely silent as Arnold continued. 4 words changed 3 lives and launched this foundation. Now I have 4 more words for everyone here tonight. Make their sacrifice matter. The response was immediate and powerful. By evening's end, the foundation had received pledges totaling over $20 million, far exceeding their initial fundraising goals. As the event concluded, Kevin found Aaron standing alone on the venue's terrace, looking out at the city lights. "Overwhelming, isn't it?" Kevin asked, joining him at the railing. Aaron nodded. "From one medal to all this, sometimes life takes unexpected turns." "Any regrets about getting involved?" Kevin asked. Aaron considered the question before shaking his head. "No, this was never about me. It's about them." He nodded toward a group of young veterans laughing together near the bar, momentarily free from the challenges of their recoveries. Every generation of warriors faces different battles, but similar struggles when they come home. They deserve every bit of support we can provide. Kevin nodded, his gaze following Aaron's. "I never thanked you properly." "For what?" "For accepting my apology that day. You could have dismissed me. You had every right to." Aaron turned to face him directly. "Holding grudges helps no one. What matters is what we do next." Inside, Arnold was concluding his final remarks for the evening. "Remember, when we recognize the heroes among us, we elevate our entire society. Their example challenges us all to be better, to serve something larger than ourselves." As his words carried out to the terrace, Aaron and Kevin stood in companionable silence, an unlikely friendship forged through an initial moment of disrespect, transformed by 4 simple words that had touched millions. Heroes still walk among us. Have you ever witnessed a small moment of recognition change someone's life? Or perhaps you've been the recipient of such acknowledgement yourself. Share your experiences below, and remember that sometimes the most powerful words are the simplest ones, spoken with genuine appreciation for those who serve others. 1 year after the inaugural gala, the Heroes Walk Among Us Foundation had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. What began as a single rehabilitation center had grown into a nationwide network of facilities, each equipped with cutting-edge technology and staffed by professionals dedicated to veteran care. The mentorship program had successfully paired over 500 veterans with corporate positions, while the research division was making promising advances in PTSD treatment and prosthetic development. On a crisp autumn morning, similar to the day when Aaron and Kevin first met, a dedication ceremony was underway at the Foundation's newest facility in San Diego. The location had been specifically chosen for its proximity to several military bases and the large veteran population in the area. Kevin Smith stood at the podium, addressing the assembled crowd of veterans, medical professionals, and community members. His demeanor had changed subtly but noticeably over the past year, less of the corporate swagger, more genuine conviction in his bearing. "When we break ground on a new center," Kevin explained, "we always include a special tradition initiated by our co-founder Aaron Brooks." He gestured to where Aaron stood quietly at the side of the stage. Though still uncomfortable with public recognition, Aaron had accepted his role as the Foundation's spiritual compass, ensuring that every decision remained true to its original purpose. "Aaron," Kevin invited him forward. Aaron approached the podium, carrying a small wooden box. Opening it carefully, he removed a tarnished medal, not his Medal of Honor, but an ordinary service medal. "This belonged to Frank Johnson," Aaron explained, his voice strong despite his evident emotion. "We served together in Vietnam. Frank didn't make it home, but before our final mission, he asked me to keep this safe. Today, it becomes part of the cornerstone of this building, along with medals donated by veterans from World War II through our most recent conflicts." As Aaron placed the medal into a special cavity in the cornerstone, a military honor guard presented arms. The simple ceremony carried profound meaning for the veterans present, many of whom had donated their own medals to similar cornerstones at other facilities. "Each center we build carries these symbols of service, Aaron continued. Not for display, but as a foundation, literally, upon which we create spaces of healing. A reminder that everything we do here is built upon the sacrifices of those who served. The cornerstone was sealed, and Kevin returned to the podium to complete the official dedication. As he spoke about the specific services the San Diego facility would offer, Aaron's attention was drawn to a young woman in the front row. She sat in a wheelchair, her right leg missing below the knee, watching the proceedings with intense focus. After the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Aaron made his way to her. "Sergeant Erica Garcia," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you, sir." "No need for sir," Aaron replied, shaking her hand. "I work for this foundation, same as anyone else." Erica smiled knowingly. "With respect, you and I both know that's not entirely true. This whole thing exists because of you. Because of all of us," Aaron corrected, using the same words he had spoken to Tyler Jimenez in the hospital room a year earlier. "I'll be working here," Erica explained. "Counseling for newly injured veterans. I finished my psychology degree. During my recovery," Aaron nodded appreciatively, "the most effective help often comes from those who've walked the same path." "That's what Mr. Schwarzenegger said when he visited our rehabilitation unit," Erica responded. "He told us about how you changed Kevin Smith's perspective with just your example. It made me want to be part of this work." Aaron was about to respond when he noticed Kevin approaching with a familiar figure, Arnold himself, who had continued his support of the foundation, though usually without publicity. "Surprise inspection," Arnold joked as he reached them, his trademark smile warm and genuine. He extended his hand to Erica. "Arnold Schwarzenegger, pleasure to meet you, Sergeant Garcia." Erica's professional composure momentarily slipped into starstruck surprise. "You remember my name?" "Of course," Arnold replied simply. "Kevin mentioned you would be joining the counseling team here. Your background is impressive." Kevin nodded in agreement. "Erica will be pioneering our new peer support program, Veterans Helping Veterans Navigate the Challenges of Recovery and Reintegration." As the four of them toured the nearly completed facility, Arnold walked alongside Aaron, speaking quietly enough that the others couldn't hear. "I received a letter last week," Arnold said, "from a retired Marine who saw our video and was inspired to start a similar program in his hometown. Small scale, just volunteers, but he's helping homeless veterans find housing and work." Aaron nodded thoughtfully. "It's happening everywhere. People are remembering to look for the heroes around them." "That's the real legacy here," Arnold agreed. "Not just the buildings or programs, but the shift in perspective." They paused at a large window overlooking the physical rehabilitation space, where specialized equipment was being installed for veterans with various injuries. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have gone that day?" Arnold asked. "If I hadn't been there, if Kevin hadn't chosen to apologize, if you hadn't accepted that apology?" Aaron considered this. "I believe good people usually find their way to doing good things, even if the path is indirect." Arnold smiled at this characteristically humble response. "Perhaps, but sometimes they need a moment of clarity to show them the way." He glanced toward Kevin, who was discussing technical specifications with the facility director. "A year ago, he was a different man." "We all were," Aaron replied. Their tour concluded in the facility's community space, where veterans could gather for support groups, social activities, and family events. The design intentionally created an atmosphere of camaraderie rather than clinical treatment. "There's something we'd like to show you both," Kevin said, gesturing to a wall that had been covered with a cloth. At his nod, a staff member removed the covering, revealing a large photograph. The image captured the moment from the original ceremony. Arnold whispering to Aaron on stage, the veteran's eyes glistening with emotion. Beneath it, engraved on a simple plaque, were the words that had started everything. "Heroes still walk among us." Aaron stood silently before the photograph, his expression unreadable. Arnold placed a hand on his shoulder. "Too much?" Kevin asked, suddenly uncertain. Aaron shook his head slowly. "No, it's important to remember how this began, to remember why we're doing this." Later that afternoon, as the official events concluded, Aaron found himself alone in the community room, studying the photograph. The moment had become so iconic that sometimes he felt disconnected from it, as though it had happened to someone else. "It's strange, isn't it?" came a voice behind him. Michelle Hendricks had joined the foundation early on, leaving her defense industry position to oversee veteran outreach programs. "What's that?" Aaron asked. "How one small moment can change." "So much," she replied, moving to stand beside him. "I remember watching it happen, not realizing we were witnessing the beginning of something significant." Aaron nodded. "I've been thinking about my platoon lately, the men who didn't come home, wondering what they would think of all this." "They'd be proud," Michelle said with certainty, "not just of the foundation, but of how you've carried their memory forward." Their conversation was interrupted as Kevin and Arnold returned, accompanied by a group of veterans who would be working at or receiving services from the new facility. "We've been discussing next steps," Kevin explained. "Arnold has some ideas for expanding our reach." Arnold nodded. "International chapters, beginning with countries where American troops have served alongside local forces. Many of our allies have wounded veterans without access to the resources we're developing here." The suggestion resonated with Aaron. "That makes sense. Service and sacrifice know no borders." As the group discussed logistics and potential partner organizations, Aaron observed the interaction with quiet satisfaction. What had begun as his and Kevin's project had developed its own momentum, drawing in others with the skills and resources to expand its impact beyond what either of them could have achieved alone. That evening, a small dinner was held for the Foundation's core team and major supporters. As dessert was served, Arnold rose from his seat, raising his glass in a toast. "1 year ago," he began, "we launched this foundation with a simple idea, that heroes walk among us, often unrecognized and underserved. Today, we've helped over 2,000 veterans access medical care, housing, employment, and community. But numbers don't tell the real story." He gestured to where Tyler Jimenez sat, the young Marine who'd been recovering in the hospital during Aaron and Arnold's first joint visit. Now walking with a prosthetic leg and working as an outreach coordinator for the foundation, Tyler represented the personal impact of their work. "The real story," Arnold continued, "is in each individual life touched by this work. Each veteran who finds renewed purpose. Each family reunited with hope. Each community strengthened by the contributions of those who served." He turned to Aaron. "None of this would exist without your example of quiet courage, both during war and in peace. The medal you earned represents a single day of heroism, but your lifetime of service to fellow veterans is equally deserving of honor." Aaron, uncomfortable as always with personal recognition, shifted his focus to the others in the room. "This foundation represents the best of America, not just our capacity for military service, but our commitment to caring for one another afterward. Every person in this room has contributed to that mission." As conversations continued around the table, Kevin found a moment to speak privately with Aaron. "I've been thinking about how we met," Kevin admitted, "about how close I came to missing out on being part of something meaningful." Aaron studied him thoughtfully. "Sometimes our worst moments lead to our best opportunities. I was so focused on the wrong things," Kevin continued. "Success measured by contracts and profits rather than impact." "And now?" Kevin smiled slightly. Now I measure success by the stories, the veteran who walks again, the family that stays together through the challenges of recovery, the community that welcomes its service members home properly. Their conversation was interrupted as Arnold joined them, placing a hand on each man's shoulder. "The dynamic duo," he said with a warm smile. "Who would have thought it?" Kevin laughed. "Certainly not me that first day." "The unlikely alliances often prove the most powerful," Arnold observed. "Different perspectives united by a common purpose." As the evening concluded, Aaron found himself standing once more before the photograph of that pivotal moment. Arnold's whispered words had become a rallying cry, a foundation name, and most importantly, a reminder to society of the obligation owed to those who serve. A year had transformed a moment of disrespect into a movement of recognition and support. Individual lives had been changed. Kevin's corporate focus redirected towards service, Aaron's quiet work amplified to help thousands. Arnold's celebrity platform used to spotlight those who rarely received attention. But beyond the three men at its center, the foundation had created ripples that continued to spread. Through the veterans who found healing within its facilities, through the communities that welcomed them home with greater understanding, through a society gradually relearning how to recognize the heroes in their midst. And it had all begun with 4 simple words whispered on a stage. "Heroes still walk among us." As Aaron turned to leave, he noticed a visitor book placed beneath the photograph. Opening it, he found thousands of signatures and messages, veterans, family members, and supporters who had been touched by the Foundation's work. Flipping to a blank page, he wrote a simple message of his own. "To those who served before us, alongside us, and those who will serve after us, your sacrifice matters. You matter, and you never walk alone." Have you ever witnessed how a single moment of recognition can spark a movement of change? Or experienced how an apology sincerely offered and graciously accepted can build bridges where walls once stood? Share your stories below, and remember to look for the heroes who walk among us every day, not just those with medals, but all who serve others with quiet courage and unwavering commitment.